Stallones. It's April 17, 2023. We're here in Tomball, Texas at the Tomball Museum Center in the Tice House. And we're here today to interview Ms. Joanne Green. This is part of the museum's oral history project, recording the memories of the families around the Northwest Harris County area that have made this area such a great place to live. And you can see our other videos and this one on our YouTube channel at Tomball Museum. Would you state your name for us?
Joanne Green.
And where were you born, Joanne?
I was born in Houston, but raised in Tomball. You know, just the hospital in Houston.
All right. Do you remember the hospital name?
It was Yale Clinic, and now it's the Yale Hospital. It then evolved right there off about Tidwell and what is that, Shepherd.
Okay. And who were your parents?
Dick Joe William Jr. and Annie Solomon William.
And what part of the area did they live in?
Tomball. My mom was born where she was born. She was raised and she died.
And whereabouts was the house?
Right there off of Hudson Kohrville Road, north of Spring Cypress.
All right. And did they call that the Kohrville community?
No, they used to call it the Prayer, but it's Tomball, but they call it the Prayer because it wasn't Kohrville.
Is it the Prayer?
Just the Prayer, because back in the day they said it was like no trees you could actually
prairie.
see. Yeah,
Okay.
But they just say prayer rather
Prayer.
than, yes.
Okay. All right. And I know your group has been involved in some of the cemeteries and the school out that way. I had this online, the Kohrville community. Whereabouts is that located near where you grew up?
Grew up. It's a mile across. It's a mile from where I grew up. It's south of Spring Cypress, and it's on Hudson Kohrville Road.
So this is if you want to hold it up for the camera, this is the historical marker for the Kohrville community. Have y'all found much history yet about Kohrville?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I know it. I mean, like, as far as what it is, the people that came, it was like three major names: Amos, Cassie, and Woods. They pretty much did the whole collection of blacks in that area. So what they did was, after 1865, they migrated to Houston, which at the time they had started this little community called Piney Point. And this guy named Mac Austin, he was the one that really got it going. So the Woods, the Amos, and other families stayed there for a while. And then my fourth generation grandfather and the fifth generation, they both moved. The fifth generation went to like Deer Ashford Highway 6. And the fourth generation, they went to what's called the Bottoms. But it's like Jones Road, Louetta, and which is Lakewood Forest now. And so they stayed and they bought property there. My grandfather, he was the first one to buy property there. He bought 25 acres in 1873. His brother, right same time, bought 50 acres. And they stayed there for a while, but it kept flooding them out. So since it was flooding them out, they looked for higher ground. That's why they moved north to Spring Cypress, which is Tomball. And my grandfather bought 92 acres and his brother bought 252 acres. And so pretty much it's just a small remnant left now that we still own from 1873.
Great. And so let's go through that a little bit slower than the...
Okay.
Yeah. So the area at Piney Point where they first came in, is that kind of west of downtown area?
Right. Well, it's southwest, actually. It's Richmond Avenue and Janetta and Fundren are the major roads that kind of make up that area.
And what were the family names again that came?
Like you have Austin, Patterson, Cassius, Woods, Blackstock. So it was quite a few, that just came in. And some of them stayed there. Basically, it was the ones that was in Kohrville that moved out, and the one in the bottom. The Woods and the Cassius is the one that left Piney Point.
And when they were at Piney Point, were they farming there?
Yes, they was farming, and I guess it wasn't enough land or whatever they was finding. I don't, because it wasn't a super big area at that time, because they were just coming out of, being enslaved. It was 1865 then, right after 1865, I should say. And then they just kind of started building and just managing and saving money really was the bigger deal, because I know they wanted bigger plots of land. So.
And which families ended up moving up to the Bottoms
Was the Woods.
The Woods.
Right.
That was your, which grandfather was
That's
that?
the fourth generation grandfather.
All right. You have a picture there.
Of him.
What was his name?
Willis Woods.
Willis Wood. And what was his wife's?
This wife was named Sarah. He had 3 wives. The first one was the one he had in Piney Point. She ended up deceased. He had a kid by her, 1 kid. So, you know, they stayed there. And while he was looking for the second one. And then so by the time he got ready to move to the Bottoms, he had the second wife. And he had 4 kids by her.
What was her name?
Her name was Mary Woods. And then she ended up passing away. And then that's when he got Sarah, and they had 7 children together, one being my grandmother.
All right. What was your grandmother's name?
Hortense Woods, Yale.
And so the Bottoms, can you describe for us roughly where that area is?
Right. It's Jones Road. It like now in capacity, I don't know exactly how long Jones Road's been there, but it was Jones Road, Louetta, right up there in that area, Mackerson Road. Kind of Lakewood Forest is the subdivision there that's been there like about 50 years now.
And that's right close to Cypress Creek where it comes through there, right?
Correct. They used to call it Falky Gully because it was just a very small gully. That's why it kept flooding. It wasn't enough drainage area. But like now, of course, Harris County has built that big watershed type like thing where the drainage is better.
And I've seen Falky's, F-A-U-L.
They spell it F-U-L-L-E-K-Y, F-A-U. You know, it's just a very, you know, the spelling, right, but it's the same area. Falky, right.
Okay.
Right.
But it's basically Cypress Creek now.
Correct.
All right. And was the Bottoms like a community? Or
yes. They created a whole community, and this grandfather, he gave an acre for the cemetery, which is still there now.
What's that cemetery called now?
Wood Cemetery. We have a gate there. We just put in a new fence there in the front, and it has Wood Cemetery there. And I'm waiting on the historical marker to come in. And we have a QR card there where people can, you know, bring up the website and see who was in the area back in the day.
So I had found, I think I found that Wood Cemetery. Yep, I don't have that one. I guess there's not a marker yet, so I didn't find. I was looking up the historical markers.
Right, it's not here. Right, it's waiting to be printed. It's not out there yet,
Yeah,
but
okay,
right.
Good.
But it's coming soon, I hope.
And so, then from the Bottoms, roughly what period of time did they live at the Bottoms?
Okay, I don't know exactly how long they lived, but they ended up buying the land kind of simultaneously because he bought the land in Tomball in 1873 also. So I guess it was like flooding and they was trying to find somewhere else, but they was there and had paid for that land in cash. The land, the 92 acres, he actually, you know, paid it off over time in installment. So and once he paid it off, then I'm assuming they moved there then. But that would have been like 1870, probably about 1878, I think, or whatever. So they probably stayed down there 4 or 5 years in the Bottom while they paid for the land in Tomball.
Do you know what type farming they were doing?
Just all different kind of crops, I'm assuming. They did more like fence posting and burning charcoals, and they always had their own stuff. So if it was cotton, it was their cotton that they picked. And so basically that was it. But that fence posting, they really kind of delve on that because even in Piney Point, they did the same thing. So I guess it was kind of lucrative because I don't know where they got all their money from. But
and they were cutting trees and making fence posts and selling fence posts.
Right. And so, and then the farming they did because it was a pretty big area to farm.
Do you know if they set up a little sawmill there, or do you know?
I don't know if they had a sawmill, but they had a school there, a little building for a school that they utilized for the school and the church. And then it was just other families down there with houses, and I'm assuming they were just like, you know, little small wood frame houses. But it was the what is it? Blackstocks and the Woods basically was in that area at the time.
Do you know if those buildings are still there, or are they not there anymore?
No, it's a subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the cemetery is the only thing that marks that has the mark there that they was actually there, other than deeds.
All right. And so then they moved away from the land that was flooding, and they moved up toward the
across
Tomball and
the one north of Spring Cypress.
All right. Well, tell us about when they got to that area. Which families which people moved there again?
Just again, my grandfather and his brother. I don't know why, but everywhere one moved, the other one moved. And the other brother, he was younger than my grandfather because he's born in like 1854. But like when they moved to Piney Point, they moved together. Then when they left there and went to the bottom,
Yeah.
he bought 25 acres. The brother bought 50. Then when they moved to Tomball, he bought 92 and the brother bought 252.
And what was the brother's name?
Jake Woods.
Jake. Do you remember his wife's name?
Yeah, what is her name? I probably go. What is her name? Rosia.
Lucia. Did they have kids also?
Yes, they had 6 kids.
Right. And so on your website, you also list the Livingston Stewart and Ellen Brown Stewart. Did they live in that area?
Yes, see, they're not kin to us. They lived probably like 3 miles north of where we was on Husmith-Kohrville Road, which some of their family still lives there now. The Stewarts wasn't related to us though. Right. But the dad, he bought that land and he gave it, as the generation passed down, they still have some in it. Well, it's actually some of them live on the land now.
So your grandfather's property, tell me again roughly where it was.
Is 1 mile north of Spring Cypress, like going toward, what was that street back in the day? Well, it still was Husmith-Kohrville Road. But, right. And so
Husmith-Kohrville takes off of what used to be 149, now it's 249, going kind of north.
Well, if you was on 249, you have to turn on Spring Cypress to get on Husmith-Kohrville Road, pretty much. Or unless you start at the end right. Where...
I remember that now.
Right. Because, see, it's a little gully there called Pulot, like this name up here. Pilot, yes. Yeah. And so it's a little bridge there as soon as you cross the bridge. But see, all that land was the two Woods brothers from back, I don't know, like it's a road now called Solomon Extension. From there all the way across Spring Cypress, where that auto zone is now, and where the school was, all of that property was theirs. And it went back over to 249 back, West Montgomery back in the day.
Yeah. So it was first West Montgomery, then 149, and now 249. So if you want to get out to that Kohrville area, you would turn right on Spring Cypress, go a little bit of ways, and immediately turn left.
Right, correct.
On the Smith-Kohrville.
Correct.
And then that's where you're talking about the land was?
Roughly? Yes, on that side.
Which side of the road of Smith-Kohrville Road was it?
Like if you coming from Spring Cypress, it's on the left-hand side.
Left-hand side. So we were talking offline here a second, and it seems like Falky Gully might have been a different tributary to Cypress Creek and maybe in the same general area. Is that right?
Right. Well, I don't know where Cypress Creek come in, but that Falky Gully, it runs from, I know, Jones Road on down, on through. I don't know how far down it runs before Cypress Creek intersects, if it intersects with it or if it runs a different way.
Yeah. So then we were talking about the southern part of Tomball, near where the Kohrville community is. And you mentioned the land that your grandfather purchased there and his brother. And what has been located when you were young in that area?
Like, meaning?
Like buildings, churches, things like that.
Oh, it was basically just a prayer. It was nothing on that side, right? It was just clear, no trees and stuff. Not when my parents, by the time I came along, everything growed up, everybody was working. It wasn't anymore like that. But basically back in the day when my mom was growing up, that's what it was. And then when you crossed Spring Cypress, you had the church, you had the 2 cemeteries, and it used to be like a large hall there. Like it was a building where people could go do cannery and quilting, things of that nature. And they was involved with the 4-H back then with that Prairie View extension. So that's kind of what, but in Kohrville, you actually had people that had auto mechanic shops. They had a little store, gas station. A lady, she's like a beautician. A lady did flowers. So they had some entities going on as far as businesses. So they, one guy, he used to like peddle produce. He grew it and he peddled the produce. And my uncle, they told me, he did the same thing, but he was gone before I got here. So he used to even kill a lot of varmints like rabbits and squirrels and stuff like that and sell it to the families. And he did produce. And my dad said they used to go to the market down there, the farmer's market, because my uncle raised all these vegetables and they took them to the farmer's market and he sold them. Mm-hmm.
All right. So when we're coming up north on Huffsmith Kohrville Road, north from Spring Cypress, give me an idea again where the church was.
No, the church is south.
South?
Yeah, because it was the school, the church, and the cemetery is all right there, and that's south of Spring Cypress.
All right.
All that was like the little downtown
Okay.
Kohrville, I guess you'd say, where everything kind of happened with people gathering together.
Was it at the intersection of Huffsmith Kohrville Road and Spring Cypress?
Yes, right. South of it, right.
On the south side of Spring Cypress?
Yes, south side,
All right. Mm-hmm. And that church building, where did it come from?
The church building, they built it there. From the bottom. It like they had a little building there that they utilized for school and church. So when the Amoses purchased the land in Kohrville, they moved that little building up to Kohrville so they could still have it, because they didn't have a school there at first. So they could still have a little school and actually it was utilized for church there too till they built the first building. Because it used to be like a white wood frame building that they had built initially before they built the big brick church that's there now.
All right. And you mentioned the Amos. Is that?
That's her dad.
So Sarah Amos Woods' dad?
Yes, this is Sarah Amos Woods. This is one of his kids. He had 5 kids.
And that was Thomas Amos?
Thomas Amos, And they bought the land in 1880 and moved there.
To Kohrville area?
Mm-hmm. And he and his son-in-law, one of his daughter's husband, Martha Amos, they together bought, 130 acres together. And then after they paid for it and everything, then they split it. It was 65 acres on the front side. That's why, like, the cemetery is on Huffsmith Kohrville Road, because that was part of his property, and he gave that for the cemetery. And then the back side was the Cassies, and so they divvied up the land to different relatives and stuff. And it's a few relatives still live there now. Yeah. Not a whole bunch, but it's a few.
So near the church building, what was located there in that Kohrville community?
It was the school. We had 2 buildings, and they look like this.
All right.
And it was 2 of them just like this, and a restroom in between when I got there.
When you got there, and that's the one at the Farms Park now, right?
Yes, That's the building they took from Kohrville. Mm-hmm.
And inside they have the little shop where they can sell books or some older toys and things, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Do you know roughly when they moved that from Kohrville over to Wonderlick Farms?
It was they moved. Well, see, it stayed there a little while because they totally integrated in '68. I was there the last year in 4th grade, so we left. So a few years after they took the building, they left one building that looked like this, but the families didn't keep it, so it ended up just falling down. And then they came and got this building, but they kept it a long time, used it as a storage building, and I don't know exactly when they decided to make it a museum piece, and then that's when they refurbished it and put it in the museum.
Great. Mm-hmm. So what grades did you go in that building?
To the 4th grade, half of 4th grade. The 2nd semester, then we started going to the school on Spring Cypress, Klein School.
All right. Mm-hmm. So before, for the older kids, do you know what grades they went to there at that school? Oh,
the school only went to the 8th grade. But, at the time, I didn't realize it because when you're small, you think, but it only went to 8th grade. Kids that was older than me, they went to Kohrville, that was in Acres Home. They came to Huffsmith, which, they had to the 12th grade. But Kohrville never went to the 12th grade before integration.
All right. Mm-hmm. And I had this picture from earlier. It looked like an earlier school building.
Right.
Do you know anything about that one?
This my parent, my mom. Now, see, she went to school because she was born in 1922. So she went to school there. Yeah, and that's her.
Great. Mm-hmm. What was her name?
Annie Solomon William.
And her husband?
Dick Joe Jr. William. Mm-hmm.
And could you hold up that school building?
Sure.
This one?
This one.
This one.
This one, okay.
So that looks like the one your mom was there from.
Yes.
This is from one of the Tomball books from 1910. Did your mom tell you any stories about that school building?
Who? Oh yeah, because really they was about the same. You didn't have air conditioning, but they had wood heaters. Unlike us, have butane. Used to have them in the top of up in the area where the kids couldn't touch it, and it wasn't a cafeteria there, and so you either had to bring a sack lunch. They had a little cafe down the street, down by the cemetery, it was like hamburgers and stuff if you didn't want to bring your sack lunch, and it was but it was comfortable. We played outside, and teachers was real nice, and so and the parents was much more involved, so you didn't really have a lot of cutting up, wasn't too much cutting up, because parents then, anybody pretty much could chastise you if you was cutting up. If the teacher chastised you, the parents is going to chastise you. So you had that. It was a good makeup for you, and it was a lot of more male involvement, which you really need, because when boys get a little bigger, ladies can't really do a lot with them, and so, but when you got that male present, you get a different. So the boys then cut up, like, people did stuff, but nothing like like they doing now.
Yeah, sure. So some of the history that you collected on some of this I was reading about on your Kohrville Community Association. You have a nice website there. How long have you been involved in that association?
Oh, since about 2011, just really involved, because what it was, they were constantly talking about getting a cemetery dedicated. And this one lady they was talking to, they don't really know much history, so how you kind of, if I can do something, I will, just to, So I went and did the dedication. Then they was like, well, we need a historical plaque, so I did the historical plaque, and then it just took off from there, and I've just been involved ever since.
Great. And so Thomas Amos and his wife, where was Thomas from?
They was all from Mississippi, and they all migrate. I don't know if they was somewhere past Mississippi prior to that, but when you look on census and stuff, it shows like they was born in those places. Someone was born in Virginia, like Jake's wife, her lineage was from Paris, France. And so but I guess eventually after they got to be an adult, pretty much most of them was in Mississippi. And when they came to Piney Point, right after 1865.
And this is showing that Thomas Amos' wife was Harriet Patterson Amos, and she was from Louisiana. And they also look like they settled in Piney Point, and then came up to that Kohrville area.
Right.
And the Cosseys, tell us about the Cosseys.
The Cosseys, that was his son-in-law. He was married to, matter of fact, it was her sister. It was Sarah's sister that he was married to. Duncan Cossey was married to Martha Cossey, and that was his sister right here. That's her sister.
So this is Willis Wood photograph with his wife Sarah Amos Wood.
The Sarah Amos Wood is Martha Amos Cossey. They were sisters, Thomas Amos kids, and so he was married, and so he and the son-in-law purchased the land together.
All right, and that area of Kohrville, it looked like it had been started possibly by a German family, the Cormans?
Yes,
Do you know anything about the Corman family?
Oh, just a little bit. I know he was the postmaster there, and they had a store, and so pretty much that was it, because it was just like a small family apparently, because there's no descendants there now, or was when I came along. So if they had any, they moved away. But they have that little cemetery right there on 249 though.
This says that in 1906, Tom Amos purchased 1.6 acres from William Bubinghausen for the Strangers Rest Cemetery. Where is that cemetery? Right
across. See, it's the Amos East right here, the cemetery right across from there where the church is. Because, see, he initially just bought that land, it's an odd shape, and they say they don't know why he even bought it from William, but he bought it and ended up just being a cemetery. But like now, we changed it from the Strangers Rest, because what that was back in the day, if you wasn't family, people, put you in another area, and it's Strangers Rest because you're not a relative. But, of course, that then kind of evolved. So it's Amos East and West now.
All right.
And we have the arches that says Amos East, Amos West.
Which one was the first one? That
The East.
East?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about cemeteries. I wanted to ask you about this. There was another one I found, the Cormans family
Yes.
cemetery. Is that located fairly close?
Yes, this is right on 249 where those apartments are. I don't know the name of those because they've been there forever. The apartment's been there forever, but it's just like it looked, super small, and it's just right there. That's why I say I don't guess their family was very big or they left after whoever passed away, because there was no more Cormans in Kohrville.
And then I found close by Boobinghausen Cemetery.
This cemetery, Joanne actually took me to it because it's her family. It's actually in a storage unit.
Joanne Earhart?
Right. They got, and see, she was like my mom, them friend, Joanne and her sister, Margie. Because, they was raised right there on the corner of Spring Cypress in 249. Well, it was West Montgomery back in the day.
So Joanne Earhart is Joanne Boobinghausen Earhart. She volunteers here at the museum. That's who you're talking about?
Yes, And see, she grew up with my mom and them and stuff. And see, her dad had a store. So everybody went to the store and, did their trading or whatever. And so they was like more kind of like family in a sense. Because see, like Margie, her sister, like she was along with my mom. So everybody just kind of, got along. She moved around. They moved around with each other and everything. And so.
Where was the Boobinghausen store?
Right there where Walmart is.
Oh.
That whole area was all their property.
So that corner, the northwest corner of Spring Cypress and 249.
And see, even it crossed Spring Cypress actually, but when they started developing, they put that road through there. And so it cut their land, it kind of cut their land.
I see.
Yeah.
But the store was right there, out, sort of like that northwest corner.
Yeah, about kind of like where Walmart was. I never saw it because I wasn't here yet.
Yeah.
But my mom, my dad, yeah.
Okay. So we were talking about the Amos Cemetery. Were you involved in getting this historical marker for that one?
Yes, I got the historical marker for it. I did the research and got it.
Great.
The dedication in it. Marker.
So let's go back to your grandfather. Do you know what type of activities to make a living that he was involved in?
Same thing. It was more that fence posting. They did a lot of that, and I know they farmed. And like I say, they did some cotton, but it was just their cotton that they did. Like they didn't really work for anyone. Like per se, I'm not saying they didn't never do like maybe, I don't know, worked at a dairy or something, but they was pretty self-sufficient. Like they made their own, like they were self-employed, I should say. And so everybody pretty much worked for themselves.
They had enough land there to do pretty good farming operation, right?
Right.
And his brother was doing the truck farming you mentioned, selling produce.
Right, no, that was another guy. That was this guy that was in Kohrville. He used to do the produce. Yeah.
Okay.
And he used to just pedal through and I got to see him before he deceased. He was an older guy, but he used to pedal in Kohrville, like he'd drive around, had a truck and just sold vegetables and stuff off of it.
All right. And so your grandfather's brother that had the other land up there in north a little bit, what was he doing to make a living?
Right, same thing, because he had the 252 acres.
Yeah.
So they was doing, I'm assuming, cotton crops, and that fence posting though was something that was, and then they did this stuff called burning charcoal, like they burn the charcoal and sell it. And so they did things like that. So they pretty much was like, and then, all their food was accessible. They had cows and hogs and chickens, and so that was taken care of too, and just a lot of vegetables and stuff. So
great. And so your mother, she grew up there?
Yes, born in the same house that he was. Cause see, her mom died when she was 3 years old, so her grandparents ended up raising her. So her mom lived with the grandparents, and so she was born in the house the grandfather had.
And roughly what year did she get married?
She got married in 1946. And so she and my dad was married 57 years before she passed away.
And was your dad from that area too?
No, my dad was from Madison County.
Up near Madisonville?
Midway.
Midway? All right. And what did he do up there? growing up?
He wasn't raised there either. His parents died. He was 5 when his mom died and 6 when his dad died. So his uncle took to raise him, and he just stayed up there just a little while, but he didn't stay in Midway. His uncle was the kind that kind of moved around and rented like just a big piece of property, like 200-300 acres, because he liked hunting. So he used to do fur trapping, like minks and stuff like that. He would kill and send them to New York and get paid. Because like I saw this one receipt, like he got paid $18 for a mink hide. So he basically, and he and his wife had one child, and it deceased. So it was just them. And then so when he had my dad and raised him, they was happy to have I guess you're happy to have a boy, at least.
Yeah.
And so he did that. He did fishing. He did the same thing, like produce. He'd take it around. They said he grew peanuts and sold those. I don't know because, I wasn't here yet. So.
Yeah. All right. And after they got married, did they stay there in the Kohrville area?
Stayed right where she was born. Mm-hmm. And it was so funny, though, because her first cousin married my dad and nephew. They ended up getting a divorce. So he bought the land they had. So it actually joined into the land my mom inherited. So we just right there.
And what did your dad do for a living through the years?
Before I got here, he did, he worked in a steel thing, like where they made steel. And then he worked for the railroad for 9 years. Then he started hauling pulpwood, and he did that till he was 70 years old.
All right.
And he retired.
When he was working for the railroad, did you hear what he was doing for the railroad?
Yeah, it was called the extra game, where they kept the tracks repaired. Mm-hmm.
So when you were growing up there at the house, what do you remember your dad being involved in? Which of those activities?
Well, my dad, he worked a lot, what he did, but he was really good with like the widows in the areas. He would always cut firewood for them and just give it to them. And, any other thing, like back in the day, they didn't really have people that just dug a grave. So when someone passed away, the whole group would get together and just dig a grave, things like that. Mm-hmm.
When he was in the pulpwood business, do you know where he was hauling a pulpwood to?
Oh, yeah, Champion Paper Mill. And then after Champion Paper Mill, so many years, it was a man named Giesinger that was in Montgomery County. And so he used to take it up there, and they called that the switch, because they would take it off of his truck and just load it onto a car, a railroad car.
I've heard of Karen Switch up there. Is that near where?
I don't know, because Jesus knows, I wouldn't even know how to get it. But the man name was Giesinger, though. Giesinger. I'm supposing, I guess, Ginser or something like, I don't know, or Singer maybe. I'm not for sure.
Singer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the railroad along there, they had switches, and they would name that area, like the one I heard about is Karen Switch. But there's probably a lot of them
right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so he was the one, because he'd take his wood there. But he went to Champion Paper Mill for a long, long time.
Where was Champion Paper back then? Do you know?
Pasadena, still there now. Mm-hmm. Right.
Do you know where he would go to cut the pulpwood, or did he
Everywhere.
cut it, or did he just haul it?
Oh no, he cut it everywhere. Like that Camel Burrows, the Borough Park there, that's in Huston. He cut wood there forever, and just anywhere he could find a big tract of timber, he would go by it and just cut. And he actually was in World War II also. He didn't leave the States, but he was in World War II.
What did he do in World War II?
He was I don't know exactly what he did, but I know he said he did some, he guarded people and stuff like that. And but he didn't stay in there that long. But what made him go was, back in the day, they would tell you couldn't quit a job. But, my dad was pretty, so he quit a job. And so they made him go to the Army. But he didn't stay that long, though. But he got an honorable discharge and everything.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So do you remember stories about growing up with your mom and dad there in that area?
Oh, yeah. It was pretty pleasant. They just, just life. And it was a lot of relatives, so it was always a lot of functions going on at churches. They had anniversaries, and they had, homecomings. But just even my immediate family with my mom and dad, my dad loved to play dominoes. So we was having every weekend somebody was at our house playing dominoes.
And it sounded like there was a church in the school building, but I was reading about also a community building.
Yes,
there?
it was the large hall. That's the one where they had the cannery, where they had the quilting. They was involved with 4-H and Prairie View Extension. And so, but by the time I came along, the building was still there, but they used to, like, the Masonic and the Eastern Star. My mom was Eastern Star. They used to have meetings there, teas and stuff like that. So they really wasn't canning and quilting anymore like they was prior to that.
So tell me about your first memories of school there. Do you remember
was fun.
teachers or
Yeah.
describe it for
Matter of
us a
fact,
little
I
bit?
have a
Good.
teacher. This was my teacher, 1st through the 4th grade, and that's her husband. He was our principal.
What were their names?
Her name was Gladys Richardson. His name was William Richardson.
And do you know who the other people are in the photo?
Oh yeah, this is a cousin. That's Willie Solomon, and this is he was the band teacher, Mr. Whitley, and this lady was named Carol Gonzalez, but she came from Garden City. I don't know why she was at Kohrville, but back then, a lot of people went to a lot of different schools, like because they are older than me.
That's a great picture. Where did you find that?
This lady gave it to me. That's why I say
Sure.
once you and see, this was me when we integrated. This was my 2nd semester. That's me on the front row at the end.
So this was from after you integrated to Klein schools.
Yeah, that's 4th grade. Like as soon as I left Kohrville, that was 4th grade, the 2nd semester.
In 1968, right? Good. And what school building did you go to at Klein, the first one?
Okay, they only had the 3 schools. That one on Spring Cypress, that was the elementary, which is the building is still there now. And then they on Student and Airline, they had the intermediate school, was junior high back in the day. But I think it's an alternative school or something now. And then the high school.
The earliest Klein High School, right?
Right, when it was little.
All right. What other photographs did you bring for us today?
Okay, this was like a social. And see, everybody on there is a relative, pretty much. And this was in one of the school buildings. Like, they used to have stuff like this in the school building. Activities, they would have little dinners and programs and things of that nature.
Do you know roughly when this photo was, maybe?
I don't know. These people are young on here. So it had to be probably like, I'm going to say maybe early 60s, maybe, or late 50s, because these people, all of these people are older than me. This lady right here, matter of fact, she's my mom's first cousin's 2 sisters' kids. So, and she was born in 1913.
Are any of your immediate family in that photo?
No, they just all cousins.
Okay.
This is a cousin. She's a cousin. And yeah, these 2 are cousins. The rest of them are just in the neighborhood, like.
Right. What other photos did you bring?
Okay, this lady here, she was, her name was Lottie Chloe Carter. And matter of fact, this is her niece. This is because her mother was named Trissy, and Trissy was Sarah's sister, Tom Amos' daughter. So this was Tom Amos' granddaughter.
So Sarah Amos Woods.
Was her mom's sister, which was Trissy, Amos Chloe. And so here she was a midwife, they said, to a whole bunch of kids. And she was very active in the community, getting things done. And they have a street called Carter Road there. And they said they named that after her because of the work she'd done. But Carter is a married name. Chloe was her maiden name.
How do you spell that last name?
Carter.
But the other one, Chloe.
Oh, Chloe, C-L-O-W.
C-L-O-W.
Right.
Thanks. Great. Any other photos?
And this was after integration. They did a essay contest. And this lady here, she's from Kohrville. This lady's from Garden City. And this boy, he would have been inclined to.
Bruce Hildebrand, I see, yeah. Carol Gonzalez and Cheryl Autry. Are any of those kin to you?
No, she's not related. They was raised right where Bimbo's is. They used to own Bimbo. They had the land prior before that was the Autry property.
before it was Bimbo. Okay.
And this is Mr. Richardson again. And this was just a community development newspaper. And it shows where Kohrville won $25 and Hockley and the rest of the things just won a certificate. So they was, inspiration in like keeping the community up, just keeping on top of stuff like when they was forming and how they was doing things and everything. So I thought that was pretty neat. I had just seen this. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's good.
And so
tell me any other memories you might have from your school days.
School was just fun. We just went to school and just played. I was in Girl Scout and just moved around, cause especially at Kohrville, we was all together because most of us was like relatives. We wasn't relatives, friends. Everybody knew everybody, I should say. So the kids, just like I said, it wasn't a lot of ruckus because parents was more involved. And then when we moved to Klein, it wasn't a problem either. The kids was your friend. And so you just, because matter of fact, I'm going to show you this girl right here. This girl right here by the teacher, her name is Teresa Davis, right? I was in a Taco Bell, and she said, "Is your name Joanne Williams?" And I was like, God, she must know me from school because I've been a green forever. But I wouldn't have never known her. You see how she looked? But her hair was straight, no glasses, and she had lost weight. So I wouldn't have never picked out, but I was just totally surprised that she remembered me,
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, we just played. And like I say, when you're younger, all that stuff is not in your head yet. So you don't really think so negative. So the kids just play with you like kids, just.
Sure. The area around Klein and like Klein High School, kind of describe for the camera what was in that area back then when you were in school.
Basically nothing. Because so many people go, "Did y'all skip school?" Where are you going to skip? You got to walk 30 miles. But right across the street from them was a black family called the Kirkwoods. Right down the street from them, they called the Close. Now, they are related to us. They had property on that side all the way down to almost Heaton Feed Store. And so, and then they had a little remnant. They still have a little remnant left, the last of the original Close. She just passed away. And so, but the people that inherited, they supposed to keep the land. And so, and then on the other side, like literally it was no stores. It was nothing. You had to go down Student Airline, almost to Spring Cypress. And it was just a little, like a 7-Eleven. But it wasn't even a 7-Eleven. It was something like a 7-Eleven. Yeah. So it was really nowhere to, literally nowhere to go.
So let's go forward in time. After high school, what did you do?
After high school, I went to business school, and my first job, I went on the interview. I got the job. It was Hudson Engineering at the time, but they changed it to McDermott Engineering. They used to have their corporate office in Louisiana, but after that Katrina, they moved here to Houston, and the corporate office on Memorial now in I-10. And so I worked there for 10 years, got laid off twice. They called me back. And then after that, I went and worked at this check printing place for 7 years. I was a typist. And then after that, because I couldn't really deal with that because the company bought them out and they had us working at night. I'm not good at nighttime work. So then I got on with the Texas Department of Public Safety. And so I was there 26 years, and I retired.
What did you do for them?
I was admin help, administration, and I didn't work in driver license. I worked in the field, in the main office.
Where was that?
Well, it started on Tacoma. We was on Tacoma and right up in there. What is that? 290. And then we left there because they built us a nice new building off of West Road and 290.
Did you have kids?
Yeah, I have 2 kids. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Grandkids? Great grandkids?
5. No, not great yet. Just grand.
5 grandkids. And there's a lot of small cemeteries around that some of them are not maintained well. So how did you go about starting your organization to try to help take care of them?
Well, see, the organization already was started when I started with them because the older people, it's always been kind of like hit and miss. but you just didn't really have anybody that was dedicated and to do it on a regular basis. So around 2007, they actually got enough interested people where now the guys and then you have some people like my age just catching on that will help, because the other guys are almost 80 years old, and so you got a few younger ones that's coming in to help maintain. So when they actually do, and they don't charge anything, so that helps us out a lot. So that helps us where we can keep money to get the fence, like the fencing that we need to get done.
And what's the name of your organization?
Kohrville Community Association.
So back in your grandparents' day, it sounded like the churches were set up similar to the schools. Were they kind of set up together?
Yeah, well, initially before they built the first wood frame church that was an actual church, they moved the little building from the bottom that they was utilizing for a church and a school. They moved it to Kohrville, and they worshiped in school in that until they got enough money to build the first church standalone itself. Then after the standalone church, they eventually built a school building there. I don't know exactly what year, and then from there it just took off.
And now we have integrated schools with independent school districts, but back in the day, was the county involved at all in the schools, or was that just the local community?
Well, it was the local community to 1938. That's when Klein actually took all the little schools, no matter what ethnicity, like little schools that were just set up everywhere. They took all of them under their umbrella in 1938. But prior to that, it was just families having school and, teaching kids, Mm-hmm.
All right. But even after Klein took over, when was desegregation? Do you know?
68 was the last year when because they closed it when I was in 4th grade.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So through the years, from what you've heard from your grandparents' day to your parents' day to our time, how has the Kohrville community been? Has it gotten bigger, smaller, or is it both? Or how did it go over time?
Well, it evolved over time, where when the older people died, it's not predominantly African American now. It's pretty much everybody, because a lot of the people, when they passed away, and a lot of kids had already moved to Houston, Dallas, and around. So it just, the ones that's kind of lingering on is just kind of like older people. And then when they die, usually the kids sell the property and then just, either develop, buy it, or something like that.
Do you still have part of your family living on the original home place of your grandfather?
Mm-hmm. I'm one of them.
You're one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Any others?
Oh, yeah.
Sisters, brothers, cousins living there too?
Yeah, my sister lived on it, and then right down, because we like on a little dirt road right down, I have a cousin, a whole bunch of them live on the other end. Mm-hmm. It's probably I don't know, probably about a good 20 or 30 of them on the other end. Mm-hmm.
And did y'all sometimes, when you were a kid, come up to the Tomball area?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Well, that was the only place to shop, because you had the one little store in Kohrville. It was Jordan, and then it was Farrell, but it was just a very small store, so you always came to Klein.
And Tomball.
Or either Braddock for meat.
Yeah.
Or,
That's what I was going to ask you. What do you remember growing up about the Tomball area?
Oh, yeah, we remember all that. Braddock and Klein, when it was Wilson, and the Gloria still here, and so J.B. White.
I remember the Wilson 5 and dime. That was sort of like
Paris.
Sort of like Perry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. What other memories would you like to share with us about your time growing up in that area?
Well, I mean, like I say, it was just fun. It wasn't like one thing that would stand out over another one, because like I say, we was always just together, having fun, doing stuff. Like at my parents' house, like I told you, we was always doing stuff. Because my dad loved dominoes, and so he taught everybody how to play, my generation, the next generation, the generation after. And he played dominoes till he was 96. And so he was, and that was pretty much, my mom definitely enjoyed cooking, and she was a very good cook. And so she was always cooking, and we was just always together. And so We had a lot of fun, and it was more like my immediate family because it was enough of us to just entertain each other. We didn't ever really have to go get people, but people came over and visit cousins and stuff like that. My mom had a sister that lived in California. She would come down because see, my mom, she was married prior. She lived in San Francisco for 6 years, but that was all before us. So, and then she came back to Texas. And this is another picture I didn't show you. This was the band. I don't know all these kids. These kids are older than me. It's just a few of them in there I know. But this was the band at Kohrville. And that was that Mr. Whitley, the band teacher.
Did you have any cousins or siblings in that band?
Yeah, cousins. Yeah, this is a cousin right here. This,
oh, good.
Yeah.
And that auditorium, what they're in, where do you think that was? Do you know?
No, this was it. I don't know if this was in the. This looked like it might even been in the school. This might have been in this other school building, because they had something like this in the other school building.
A little stage behind it, right? We were talking about your father's family moving down from, I guess that was from the Madison County area.
Right. And it took them 3 days to get here.
In wagons?
Wagons.
Roughly when was that, do you know?
Probably around 19, I guess you'd say around, because he was born in 13. He was like 9, I think, or 10 when he got here. So I guess probably like 1920-something, maybe 21, 22, something like that.
I guess the roads were a lot different back then, right?
Oh, yeah. Dirt all the way. And it was so funny because he told me his aunt, that was raising him, when you don't think about it, they was moving away from horses and buggies and cars was coming along. And he was like, they need to get those cars off the road, running the buggies off, because she would sit on buggy and horse, and the cars was coming in the T models and stuff.
Kind of disruptive there, right?
Yes.
Do you know what they used to pull the wagons that they moved down with?
Some horses.
Horses.
But I know he told me his dad, because before his dad died, he had these 2 oxen. He used to plow with these oxen, though. And they was named Ben and Jerry.
Good. That's great.
Yep. And so, but as I say, my grandparents, I didn't have any. I had a grandfather, my mom, dad, but she wasn't raised up with him. But the other 3 grandparents died when my parents was very young, so they grandparents raised them. Well, like when my dad, his uncle raised him, but my mom, her grandparents raised her.
So you mentioned the midwife earlier. I suppose that a lot of the medicine back in her day was amongst the community, was it?
Right. They just made different stuff.
Okay. And by the time you were in school, where did y'all go for your health care?
They used to take us to clinics, and we would go get like the smallpox and whatever we needed.
Did y'all go to Tomball or Houston or both?
Well, Tomball and both. And they used to have a unit that would come out, like those big, they kind of have them now, where you can just go in there and they give you a shot and move on, because it was just for a shot. Like